I want to talk about this women's soccer thing, right?
Okay.
There's a big news in the sports world. I guess they just negotiated their prize money is going to be $150 million. And they're still saying they're making less than men. But I did a quick research here.
All right. Let's hear it.
So we just had the World Cup, FIFA World Cup, and that's all men, right?
Hmm.
Worldwide, the income for men on the World Cup is $7.5 billion.
Okay.
Um, in 2018 World Cup, the men in the United States advertiser alone spent 350 million, and the women's soccer World Cup in I believe it's 2019, 96 million. So if the prize money of women's soccer is 150 million, essentially the organization is losing money, right? They're going to lose $60 million.
Correct.
So is this based on merit or just based, this is an equal outcome, less of equality, because if you look at it, it doesn't seem fair to the men's soccer,
Hmm.
where the kind of money is generated and they're getting less money percentage wise. If the women's soccer, I mean, here's the thing. I get together with my girlfriends, right?
Hmm.
And we get together, we go hiking, we'll walk our dogs, we might do some shopping. There's never a time I will have friends of mine say, hey, is a World Cup for women. Let's get together, go to a bar, and watch soccer together. Or, March Madness is happening. I don't see, at least at my husband's establishment, I don't see a group of women come in, watch March Madness. Or WNBA for that matter. So, as a matter of fact, I had a guy and girl come in. We just opened, just two of them, had the jukebox on. So I asked them, I said, would you like me to put the March Madness on there? Like, yeah, sure. I said, well, I can change the audio to March Madness rather than the jukebox. I mean, the guy's obviously watching the game. And his wife or girlfriend said, oh, no, just leave the jukebox on. She has no interest in watching this. So not only men's sport is not just generating money from the advertising and the TV programming perspective, it's also generating money for restaurants and bars.
Right.
But no women come into the bars, watch any female sport or, pageantry or nothing, right? So, and I was talking to a guy yesterday about this. He goes, look, I watch women basketball. I will watch I will watch men basketball, soccer, golf, tennis. He said, but I will, the only women's sport I watch is beach volleyball. He said, I will watch women beach volleyball.
I wonder why.
I
What's
wonder
the
why.
attraction to beach volleyball?
I don't know.
I like
But,
women's tennis.
well, there you
I mean,
go.
I do.
I watched women volleyball when I was growing up because the Chinese volleyball team,
Yeah.
performed well, but I was younger. But there's
And it,
never a time I was specifically said I'm going to sit down watch a sports event that is women, except, well, I did watch gymnastics or diving. I like those kind of things. But I never had the time to sit down and watch that kind of stuff. Or would I dedicate my time to watch it,
yeah. Well, I mean, I like sports. I for some reason, if I'm going to sit down and watch TV alone, I tend to like something live. I'll watch news, news talk or sports. So I tend
Okay.
to, you'll see me watching some weird kind of, sports. But yeah, I mean, I'm not a big basketball fan, but, if I'm going to watch basketball, it's going to be men. I mean, I've tried watching the women. You know, I, the Pittsburgh women's football team. They're very good. They win most of their games. They're one of the better teams
I didn't
in the
even know
league.
Pittsburgh had a women football team.
Yeah, they were sort of up and coming. They play at, I think last I heard, they were at a high school stadium in Imperial. For a while, they were playing on the south side, that
Okay.
Couples Stadium. And I went to a couple of games. It was actually pretty good, but it was like slow motion. You know? I mean, so, it's competitive because they're well matched and they have very large women on the line, just like the men, quarterbacks. And you watch it. It was like watching a men's game, but I'm watching live too, by the way. And it just felt like everything was happening in slow motion. So I think if you just adjusted to that, but I mean, I stopped watching it because I'm not going to go all the way to Imperial to see them.
Well, let me ask you a question. When you went and watched this Pittsburgh women football game, how many women are sitting in the audience to watch this?
There aren't many people at all in the audience. I think, it's kind of like a school game. Most of the people in the audience are friends or family that have some connection to the team.
I find myself, if I
Passion. I think the name of the team is Passion. Pittsburgh Passion.
Okay. Well,
so women, I mean, for some reason, I watch tennis.
Play football.
Unless the men, the top tier men,
Yeah.
I think is really good. They're super fast and strong and everything. But if I'm going to watch the earlier rounds, I kind of prefer the women. I feel like the women are better matched in the earlier rounds, and I find it more entertaining.
I'm sure have nothing to do with the short skirts, so.
No. Well, I think there's a movement, too, to get away from that. I think they're getting more, they're covering up more.
Yeah, I mean, most of the summer, I wear those tennis shorts, and then skirts, but shorts. It's just a matter of convenience, really. I mean, people don't understand. It has nothing to do with anything. It's you make things, the movement is easier. But the same thing, right? I mean, here's what I want to say. So you have men watching the men's sport, and they generate a lot of ad avenue. It's just like when you watch beauty pageants. Mm-hmm. There's Miss Teen, Miss America, then Miss Universe, Miss World. You have all these beauty pageants that's all women. They generate a lot of enthusiasm. They have all kinds of competitions. Well, you don't see no Mr. Teen, Mr. USA. Nobody cares about that kind. There's no audience. Right? It's the same thing. So women are good at certain things. People will watch. I mean, I grew up watching pageants, Miss Hong Kong, Miss Universe, all that stuff. There was no men beauty pageant competition. If there is, they're just all more of a muscle competition. No one cares and watches it.
Interestingly, from December 22, Don Lemon with his women, that women talk show in the morning.
Right. He tells everybody
basically
past their time.
He argued that the women should not earn more than the men. And it's a great clip. Look at the facial expressions of the women. It's very similar to the past your prime thing.
If there is more interest in a men's sport, the business people, the people who make money off of sports, will put that on television because we live in a capitalist society. And if people are interested in that, then there would be more attention and more money would be paid. So it's about the money.
Why is that what people are watching? Because men were putting men's sports on TV way before women's sports. Yes. So it's the systemic, institutionalized thing. No, I'm not done yet.
They are just more interested in it.
Both started at the exact same point. They both received the same amount of marketing and promotion and all that stuff. And then we got to where we are today. That would be a different point.
Guess what? Big media giants, big advertisers. This is another opportunity to put the money where your mouth is.
I don't believe that's accurate. I respect your point, and I hear what you're saying. I don't believe that's accurate. We live in a capitalist society, and if people can make money off of whatever it is, they are going to exploit it. We are lying to ourselves if we believe that someone cannot sit here and speak the truth.
He's right. I mean, what he's talking about is capitalism. So he's saying if there was a market for it, then people would pay, and if people wanted to see it, they would pay their money, and it would take care of itself. The women on the panel were trying to say, no, it's men suppressing women's sports and this and that. And, it was interesting for me because it's sort of there's a left-wing idea that you force people to do things. You know what I mean? On a conservative side, it's more about freedom of choice, and we spend our money where we want to. But if you think, even if you go back to like when they were railing against SUVs, gas guzzling SUVs, they're like, the problem is that's all the manufacturers make now. So it's the manufacturer. They always look at this supply side thing where the manufacturers are the ones causing everybody to buy SUVs. Well, no, the manufacturers are building what people want to buy. And by the way, they get a nice fat profit margin out of them too. Initially, Broncos and pickup trucks were low margin. You get a good value, but as soon as people started wanting to buy them, the prices go way up and the profit margins go way up. So that's really, he was right. He's speaking in terms of capitalism, free market, and they're speaking in terms of, no, you don't have a choice. I mean, it really does go back to that cultural Marxism thing that, they believe people are not choosing. Everybody's being forced by the big capitalists to do whatever they do, whether they buy something or whatever opinion I want to have from this on this issue, I can find a news story to support it. Mm-hmm. If I'm on the women's side, I can find plenty of news stories that tell me that every argument that says the men generate more revenue, and I can find you a news story that says that's not true. And what I believe they're doing from looking at this is, if you look at it over multiple years, it's clear what's happening. Okay, the men's sport is definitely generating more revenue. If they can narrow in on a particular year, and one article in particular where they say the women's soccer, here, CNBC, women's soccer now generates more revenue than men's. So there goes that argument, right? Well, if you read it, they looked at 1 year. I think it was a year that the women's national team went on to the World Cup and the men's didn't. Mm-hmm. And they only looked at ticket sales. They didn't look at TV revenue. They said, well, we don't have any way of looking at TV revenue. Well, I mean, if you look at NFL, most of the money is TV revenue. Ticket sales are a very small portion. Yeah. NHL, ticket sales are probably 30% of their revenue, but it's still not a majority. So one of the better places to go is really the U.S. Soccer Federation. They have an FAQ here. And they explain, if you go back in time, the women have their union, the men have their union. So they have a collective bargaining agreement with the U.S. Soccer Federation. The men agreed to a pay structure that only has pay per play. So if you play in a game, you get paid. If you don't play, you don't get paid. If the farther you go, there's bonus money and things. The women didn't want that. The women wanted guaranteed salaries. Okay? So there's a trade-off there. Okay? I can tell you, and, in business, if you take a position where you're sort of at risk, like a sales position, you take a sales position that's pure commission, that commission is going to be a lot higher. So if you perform, you're going to make a heck of a lot more money than someone that says, I'm sorry, I need a minimum salary. I mean, a significant minimum salary, and I'll take commission on top of that. Two guys working in the same company, the one with pure commission, if the company's doing very well, the one with pure commission is making a ton more money. Right. I mean, because he's taking the risk. It's at risk. So, there was another thing where the women have health insurance, the men don't. But then if you read further, the women have health insurance through the Olympic Committee. So the women fall under benefits of the Olympic Committee, the men don't. So it's not an apples and apples. The women intentionally wanted these guaranteed salaries. And when they talk about whether the women make more money than the men, the only way that they can show the women making as much or more money than the men is to be very specific about the time period you look at and what's included in that.
And can you post that link, whatever you print out? Can you post that onto our Facebook?
Because I can. There's several articles here, but I'll do the men's national team. There's a good one from ESPN, multiple pages, that breaks down the costs. And both cases, they're losing money. As a matter of fact, I think in the women's side, when they broke it all down, the women's soccer loses a lot more money than the men's soccer.
I can imagine, because women don't go out and support women's sport. Not that women don't want to support women's sport. It just is not in our DNA to care about the sports.
Here's another fun fact.
Different.
If you want to look it up, one of the early arguments Megan Rapinoe, they were all making was, we're better. We win more games. We perform better than the men. Therefore, we should get paid more. Okay? Well, there were 2 times where the women's national team played high school boys.
Yes, I've heard about
both times. The women got crushed by the high school boys. So, I mean, there goes your argument that we're better. I mean, yeah, you're better when you're playing women, but.
Well, here goes another argument, right? So now the another factor is going to be transgendered female participating in female sports. So you're saying that the national women team who went up and won a World Cup play high school boys and got crushed. Same thing with the women, the fastest women in the world. They say 150 high school boys will easily break her record. Now, the new factor in the next few years is going to be transgender female participating in female sport. How is that going to transform biologically female sports?
Right.
So, in essence, what you just said is that biologically, women are built very differently. So now, is it going to be eventually that we're going to have men's soccer team, men's sport, and then we're going to have transgender female sports? Then we will have biological female sport. I mean, is it, if a transgender female get into the soccer and they score more goals, they run faster, they do better, are they going to say, well, it's not fair, I'm getting the same pay as all these other women, I do better?
Right. I'm a huge football fan. I mean, I've been watching football since I was little. It's a complicated sport. There's always things you can learn about it. And it's just drama, intellectual stimulation. It's great. Anyway, NFL, college, I watch it all. The USFL started playing again with 8 teams. And right now, the XFL is playing. Now, what you'll see in these team sports is there are 8 teams in the XFL. So the people, DC is one of the better teams. I think they've won all their games. And Houston, I think, is a good team. They're very popular in their city.
Okay.
But as far as a national audience, the games that get a lot of attention, that get people excited, are close, competitive games. So if you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, the only people that like a game where the Pittsburgh Steelers crush a team are Pittsburgh Steelers fans. And that's a small minority of the total target audience. And so you need a competitive game. They don't have to be the best players in the world, but they have to be competitive amongst themselves. So your point, if you start throwing transgender women, biological men into the mix and it unbalances things, I mean, this problem with women's sports is only going to get worse. If they care about making women's sports more appealing and popular, I mean, like I just told you, I really enjoy watching women's tennis. You think it's because of the skirts. I think it's because there's a lot more competition at the lower rounds, earlier rounds. You see upsets, and a lot of times it's a young teenager winning, and it's a great story. But start throwing some men in there. You're going to ruin women's tennis.
Well, yeah, I mean, the gentleman I spoke to last night.
I think Billie Jean King beat Bobby Riggs, but, so someone's going to hit me with that.
Well, I just think that, and another thing is, I told you I grew up watching soccer. Not that I didn't watch soccer, but the only reason I got interested in soccer is the soccer players.
Mm-hmm.
You know, me and my friends were absolutely start collecting pictures of soccer players.
Is this like the photo I commented on?
Yes. Well, this is what's, I mean, the audience doesn't know what's going on. So I posted a picture on my social media with a bunch of Hollywood stars. And Bill, you know.
They're all men and they're big names.
Yeah. Jack Nicholson, Tom Hanks, and
Ed Norton.
Edward Norton.
Brad Pitt.
No, I mean, and then Bob writes this very law analysis of these actors.
It wasn't that long.
Well, I'm thinking like,
I didn't know the backstory. I'm like, were these guys all in the same movie?
Yeah, like,
how are they all photographed together?
I'm like, what backstory? I mean, most women look at it, understood exactly why I posed that picture.
Yeah, so what was your reply to me? They're hot. That's the backstory.
You're like, this is a backstory. They're all hot. That's it. That's a great photo of the, and that's
so this is why you got into soccer too?
Yes. I absolutely fell in love with the Argentina team. That me and my friends started looking at the Italian team, the German team. We start picking the players we liked. Then that's how we got interested in the World Cup, because we're rooting not so much for the team, but we're rooting for the best looking team, hoping they'll win. I mean, I never sat through a 90-minute game. I just kind of went through the highlights and we were like comparing. That was the only reason we were interested in the World Cup. That's when I was 16 years old. Now I'm older. I'm looking at those young kids like I'm like, I'm too old to looking at them. I'm the age of their mother. I passed my prime on that one.
That's what it is, yeah.
Yeah, I already passed my prime.
You're out of that game.
I'm out of that game. So I'm looking at Hollywood actors in their 50s and 60s. So they're still hot. But, I mean, women and men basically, I mean, we just build differently. We care about different things, you know. I mean, I would binge watching 40 soap operas. That's like a whole love story. My husband would never sit with me watch that. And I mean, he asked me to sit with him watching Steeler game. And I'm like, okay, I'll sit. But, I like the Steelers. I want them to win. But we're just built very differently. I mean, for people to deny that, it's just ludicrous at the end of the day.
By the way, the NFL is doing a great job marketing to women. I mean, the female fan base has really grown.
I think so, especially Steeler fan. But I think the reason, I mean, I'm just saying this for my sake. I think the reason I will sit with my husband watching a game, or if we have a party at home, it's more of a social thing. You know, when we are sitting at home watching a game, if you have few couples, I don't think necessarily women is paid as much attention. We were socializing, we'll make food, it's more of a bonding experience rather than oh my God, I'm focusing on the game, and it's very different. I remember at one point we would have football parties every Sunday. This is before we had a restaurant, before I had kids. And we were in the basement watching football game, and every time I walk in the room, something happens, and they're like, Sherry, stay out of the room and go somewhere, because every time you walk in, something bad happened to the Steelers. So I stay out of the room, and me and my bunch of girls, we're upstairs. We're not watching the game. We hear screaming and yelling. We're like, oh, this is great. We're upstairs and drinking wine, making food.
I think that the reason women are attracted to men's sports is, I think, because that's where the enthusiasm is. I mean, traditionally, the men's sports have been, that's what everybody watches. Men only watch sports. And it's not like they didn't like women. It's just sports began as a male thing. And, so I think women are attracted to, like, NFL and whatnot, because that's where there's a lot of, go to a bar when there's a Steeler game on. There's a ton of enthusiasm. Or go to any football town. There's just screaming and yelling and enthusiasm. So, whether you're a man or a woman, there's something attractive to that. You're like, hey, I'm kind of missing out on something here. What's really going on?
Yep. I mean, yeah, absolutely. So,
so rather than argue and try to get somebody to give them free money, take money away from the men and give it to the women should look at the same kind of a deal and do some marketing and figure out way to market their product and build enthusiasm around it so that people want to watch it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna say this, and I think I probably people will probably be very negative towards me when I watch women's soccer or even women play football. Like in my head, it just doesn't seem right,
Yeah.
because it seems so barbaric, and it seems like that is what men do. That's what their
Hmm.
thing. They can get barbaric and be rough with each other. When you see two women are running at each other, it's like I don't want to see that. I really don't want to see that. I mean, I I see men doing it. They get up, they do their thing. Yeah, it's fantastic. But I just for some reason, it's just like watching women MMA, like or boxing. I
Yeah,
mean,
my wife doesn't like that. She's
I
like,
watch
why would they
men.
do that?
Yeah, I watch men boxing. I enjoy. I remember I watched what is that guy? Mike Tyson fight with
Uh-huh.
Holyfield. I was looking forward to that because lot you're right, a lot of men around me like, oh, this is a big fight, and I was into it. I watch it. I don't have any problem watching that. I watch a woman fight. I feel like I'm getting punched. I was like, oh, that is so
See,
painful. No.
I can watch women's, MMA men. I mean, again, if they're equally matched, I find it interesting. But it's almost like for some reason it's the team sports that aren't as good
Yeah,
with
I
men.
just can't watch any of that. Like you said, I can watch women tennis, I can watch women volleyball,
Yeah.
diving, gymnastic, and any of that stuff. I mean, I
Well,
love watching figure skating, but I
it,
cannot watch that type of sports.
I started watching soccer because of the U.S. women's team, advancing. We were on vacation at the time, and there was a lot of hype around it. So I started watching it, and you have to learn how the game works and thing to get interested in it.
Right.
And I got a little more attracted to it, and I thought it was okay. But then when I saw the men play, like I went to an actual, Riverhounds game, and I watched some of the English Premier League.
Hmm.
The skills were just so much better. I was like, once I got a little interest in the game, when I saw the men play, I was just blown away by the skill set that these guys had. I was like, wow, look at the way the passing so I mean, that's why I don't think the women can compete. It's I've tried watching some WNBA, but just doesn't seem
Well,
like
I
it's
think
there.
it will get very interesting once more and more transgender female gets into female sports, and we'll see where that all gonna go. Um,
I think it'll. I mean, if it will make it worse. I believe
well,
because
yeah,
I think it'll make it even less competitive. It'll be so lopsided at times
or people watch it for the fun of it, just to see how women. I mean, I
for the spectacle.
for
Yeah.
the spectacle in the beginning, and I think more and more people. But that's going to happen. More of that is going to happen.
I'll tell you
As,
what I'd like to see is I would like to see women. Only if their skill set, is there in men's sports in positions where they could play. Like a woman could be a place kicker in the NFL. I mean, the rules are all there to protect. You're not allowed to really rough those guys up or hit them or anything. But I don't know. I mean, they say women have the lower body strength. Could women develop to that point? I don't know. I mean, hockey, goalie.
I
I
mean,
mean, I can see it.
there are sports like women play. Like for example,
That,
I
by the
can
way,
see.
that excites me. The idea that a woman could actually perform at a level to compete against the men, that excites me. The other way around, not so much.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, the only sports I think women can probably compete. Women does better in gymnastic, and I think women can do a great job in diving, right?
Yeah.
Because they're
Yeah,
smaller.
that's another thing. Yeah, women gymnastics seems more like a woman. The women, I think it's better for me.
Yeah,
You
I mean,
know.
it's like did you watch Olympic gymnastics? They have the freestyle gymnastic. On the
Yeah.
mats they do freestyle. Now that's one like I see women doing it. It's great, but when I look at a guy doing, I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, it's like it's a sport that's better for a smaller body.
Right?
Flipping around and it's yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't think of one men's gymnastic moment memorable. I can think quite a few for women
Yeah.
gymnastics in the Olympics.
Right. They just, I mean, but we're old fashioned. We're, not modern
Yeah,
enough for that.
there's not money in that. Hey, how about ISIS-K? Can we get into that just for a little bit?
Yes, just a little bit. I've seen that.
Well, quickly, so they were there. They were the ones that bombed the airport when Biden started the slow withdrawal, the controlled withdrawal from Afghanistan. They bombed the airport. It killed like 169. Yeah. Well, it started more normal. So these guys bombed the airport. It killed about 169 Afghanis and 13 Americans. A few days later, Biden just pulled everybody out.
Right.
And that might have been political. He didn't like the look of Americans dying. The news was like the highest number of deaths. But, they saw basically the U.S. withdrawal and they took advantage of it. And now they've been there since then. They've known about them. K is Khorasan. It's like Afghanistan, Pakistan, and some other areas. They're throwback to before the current borders. But yeah, so the U.S. government now is saying that where they're within 6 months of being able to launch, attacks on Americans in Europe and in Asia. So at will, sort of unannounced, without. So basically, the U.S. government's saying, look, they're 6 months away from being able to launch surprise attacks that we're not going to be able to protect you. That's kind of how I read it. But
as you were talking about that, I just shared an article onto our Facebook about that.
Okay.
I saw the congressional hearing on that. The military guy was saying that, and I mean, are we really that surprised? We left a basically giant hole in Afghanistan, and we don't have a president that want to go after them. I mean, Trump basically wiped them out in the
ISIS-K and Afghan and the Taliban are enemies. So they're saying when the U.S. was there, this ISIS-K, they had the Taliban fighting against them, the Afghan military, and the U.S. military. So when the U.S. pulled out, basically that opposition went away. The Afghan military opposition went away. So all that was left was the Taliban fighting them. So they basically went a little better for them. Here's an interesting thing. China's making their moves in the Middle East, establishing relationships.
Sure.
I didn't know this, but China was they're the only country really that was establishing partnerships within Afghanistan. There was a hotel with a bunch of Chinese nationals living and working there. Well, on March 1st, ISIS-K bombed that hotel, killed a bunch of Chinese citizens. There's a lot of propaganda. They're against China for a bunch of reasons, but Uyghur Muslims is one of the big ones.
Right.
And, they have the whole propaganda, the way you saw against the U.S., we're going to kill all the Americans. They're saying we're going to kill all the Chinese. So China told all their people, get out. They took everybody out. And this was just a couple, 2.5 weeks ago. They pulled out of Afghanistan. So if you think about it, they were already doing this within Afghanistan to the Chinese. Now the Chinese are gone. It kind of seems like that's what precipitated this as well. So now they don't, Americans were probably saying, well, they're going to be busy attacking Chinese people in Afghanistan. They're going to leave us alone. Well, now they're going to develop the capability of moving out of Afghanistan and attacking Americans in Europe and Asia.
Well, Trump really had everybody under control, man. And that's just, I don't know. I think it's...
strength is the only way. I'm sorry.
That's the only thing they understand. That's the only thing these people understand is the strength. They don't understand anything else. So I don't understand how people don't get that. And not understanding that. I just, it's baffling to me. Absolutely baffling to me. So, are we going to be, what are we talking about? Another 9/11? What are we talking about?
Could be. Well, I forget who it was, but it's a U.S. military, Centcom, I think. They're currently saying they're a long ways away from coming across the ocean and attacking us here. But they're saying within 6 months they'll be attacking Americans in Europe and Asia.
But do we actually believe that? Do we believe they are, I mean, I don't believe that. I mean, if we have the military guy, and I watched that congressional hearing, they're not, they're serious about that, right? They're serious about we are going to be getting attacked. And I just don't understand why people wouldn't take that seriously. I think it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question is, why now? I mean, I see this happen with China just a couple of weeks ago. I mean, so, our intelligence, Centcom, saw something that they said, okay, now's a good time to announce this. I mean, I don't know.
Our show has been performing really well. Thanks to Bob doing a great job making the shorts. So if you like our show, please subscribe. And we're going to continue to bring you very good content. Have a good one.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.